All right, so up to this point, we've talked about CPCTC. We've talked about triangle congruent statements, and if we already know that two triangles are congruent, then we can mark the corresponding pieces, the corresponding sides and the corresponding angles as congruent. Now we are going to move and do the other side of it. We're going to be given two triangles and told certain pieces of information about those two triangles and about congruences that exist. And we're going to determine whether or not that's enough information to say that these two triangles are congruent. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to do that, we have to talk about what it means to be an included angle or an included side. On number 1 up here, two sides are marked. These two sides are marked. The angle that is considered the included angle in relation to the two sides is the angle that is between the two sides. It's the angle that is formed by the two sides coming together. So this side is here, this side is here. This is the angle where they meet. That is the included angle. The angle where the two sides touch each other is what we call the included angle. The included angle, again, is the angle between the two marked sides. Or you can say the angle formed where the two sides touch. When we have a situation like this where I have two sides and the angle in between them, the included angle marked, we call this side angle side, which we abbreviate as SAS. Stands for side angle side. Here's one of my marked congruent sides. Here's the angle. I'm actually going to do this in red. Sorry, I want it to stand out from my blue. Here's my side. Here's my angle. Here's another side. So I can read this going this way, or I can read it going this way. It doesn't matter whether I look at this clockwise or counterclockwise. Bless you. Thanks. We never start with the piece that's in between. We start with one of the pieces on the edge. So this isn't marked. This isn't marked. This one is. So I could start here. Side, angle, side. Or if I'm going the other way, this isn't marked. This isn't marked, but this one is. So I could start here. Side, angle, side. Thank you, Essence. So that is what an included angle looks like. An included angle. An included side is going to be in between two marked congruent angles. So here's one of my marked congruent angles. Here's the other marked congruent angle. The side that is in between them is this side right here. This would be my included side. Bless you. The included side is the side between the two marked angles. The side between the two marked angles. In this situation, I have how many angles marked as congruent? 2. In the previous example, in number 1, we had how many marked congruent angles? Just 1. So in the top one, I had 2 sides and the angle between them. And I said we called that side angle side. Notice the angle is between the 2 S's. Anybody want to take a stab at what we might call this one? Angle side angle is correct, and we abbreviate that ASA for angle side angle. Here's one of my marked angles, and then I have a side and an angle here. And again, I can read it counterclockwise, or I can read it clockwise. Either way I do this, it's angle, then side, then angle. I need you to turn the music off, please. All right. So far, so good? All right, so those are 2 of the ways that we will be using congruences between triangles to show that 2 triangles are congruent. If we have one triangle and it has 2 sides that are marked as congruent to 2 sides on another triangle, and the angle in between the 2 sides on the first triangle is congruent to the angle in between the 2 sides on the second triangle, then we will say that the 2 triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. Similarly for angle, side, angle. So let's come down here to number 3. We have 5 ways that we will show 2 triangles as being congruent to each other. This first one says if 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to 3 sides of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. The 2 that we just looked at, we had side, angle, side, and angle, side, angle. Anybody want to take a stab at what this one might be called, where it's 3 sides of one triangle and 3 sides of the other? SSS. What do you think SSS stands for? Side, side, side is absolutely correct. This is side, side, side. Second one down, we already saw this one, didn't we? If 2 sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to 2 sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. What did we call this one before? SAS, side, angle, side. Beautiful. All right. Third one down, now we're in the middle. If 2 angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to 2 angles and the included side of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. What's this one called? Angle, side, angle. ASA for angle, side, angle. Yes. You guys are knocking this one out. Next to last, if 2 angles and a non-included side of one triangle are congruent to 2 angles and a non-included side of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So this one's a little bit weird. If I'm walking around my triangle, it doesn't matter whether I go clockwise or counterclockwise. If I'm standing up here, I can't say anything about this angle because there's no markings on it. So I would keep walking around my triangle. If I'm going counterclockwise, this is the first thing that I could say anything about because it's marked. Is this an angle or a side? Angle. And then I keep walking around my triangle. I skip this because there's no congruence marks on it, and I get over here to this. Is this an angle or a side? Angle. And then I walk around. The next thing that's marked as congruent is this, and that is a side. So we could call this AAS for angle, angle, side. Or I can go clockwise, because remember, it doesn't matter whether I go clockwise or counterclockwise. If I start here and walk the other way, what would it be? SAA. So this one is SAA or AAS. This one we have two ways of writing it, but it means the exact same thing. Means the exact same thing. And then our very last one down here, what do you notice in the corner on both of these? Right angles. This last one can only be used with right triangles. If it's not a right triangle, this fifth option does not exist. What do we call the side of the triangle that is opposite the right angle? Has a long name, starts with an H. Hypotenuse. And this is the hypotenuse. And over here, opposite the right angle, this would be the hypotenuse as well. So if I have the hypotenuse of one triangle, one right triangle, and it is congruent to the hypotenuse on another right triangle, and one of the other sides, which we call a leg, one of the other sides of the right triangle is congruent to one of the other sides on the other right triangle, then those two triangles are congruent. So if the hypotenuse and leg of one triangle are congruent to the hypotenuse and the corresponding leg of another right triangle, then the triangles are congruent. If you look up at that little word bank up at the top, we've used all but one option. What do you think this one is? HL. Anybody want to take a stab at what you think HL means? That's absolutely correct. Hypotenuse leg. So these four will work for any kind of triangle. Let's see if I can write this without it being too messy. These four will work for any kind of triangle. That one at the bottom, as I mentioned, is only for right triangles. All right. So far, so good? Down at the very bottom of the page, we've got some warnings. Never, ever, 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 ever use side, side, angle, or angle, angle, angle to prove triangle congruence. You must know at least one congruent side. So we can't use side-side angle. One way to remember that, remember how I said it doesn't matter whether you go clockwise or counterclockwise? So that means the letters can be flipped around the opposite way. Don't say it out loud, but what happens if you flip this entirely backwards? That's one way you can remember that that's one of the off-limits ones. We can't use that one. The reason that we can't use that one isn't just because if you flip it around, it makes a word that we don't say at school. It's because there can be more than one triangle that meets those criteria, and the triangles aren't actually congruent. When we're looking at angle, 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 that one I can draw a pretty easy picture to explain why angle, angle, angle doesn't work. These two triangles have congruent angles. But are they the same size? No. This is why angle, angle, angle doesn't work. Angle, angle, angle. If I was going to use it, all those other ones that we learned up above is so that I can show the two triangles are congruent, which means same shape and same size. These two are same shape, but not the same size, so they're not congruent. All right. Let's flip this over and look at number 4, and we are going to practice using these 5 different reasons. In each of the pictures below, decide whether you are given enough information to determine that the triangles are congruent. If so, write why and the triangle congruence statement. So we're going to get some practice with triangle congruent statements again. All right, so let's look at part A. What's the first thing you notice about the two triangles here in part A? One is flipped. Both of them have right angles. Both of them have right angles. Their sides are equal. So they're equilateral triangles? No? So explain a little further what you mean by their sides are equal. I think I see what you're trying to say. Yes, we have a 30-inch side here on this first triangle and a corresponding 30-inch side on the other triangle. On the first triangle on the bottom, I have a 40-inch side, and on the other triangle, there's a corresponding 40-inch side. So I'm going to mark these things as congruent between the two triangles. And now I'm going to try to figure out whether this is one of those 5 reasons we can use. So I'm going to pick one place to start on my triangle. Again, I can't start here because that's not marked with a congruence. I have to go to the first piece that is marked with a congruence. So this is the first one that I see marked with a congruence if I'm going this way. Is that a side or an angle? Side. And then I walk around the triangle. I get to here, and this is marked. This is a side or an angle? Angle. And then I walk around the triangle, and I get here next. This is marked with a congruence, and it is a side. You guys agree, even if I went the other way, it would still be a side and then an angle and a side? Yes, Elahaji. Yes, give me just a moment. On the other triangle, is it also side, then angle, then side? Yes. It doesn't matter whether I go this way or whether I go this way. We have a side marked, and then an angle, and then a side. I don't know why I wrote A, and then a side. Is that one of the 5 reasons I'm allowed to use? Yes. So we're going to say yes. And then we're going to write our triangle congruence statement. Triangle, give me one way to name the first triangle, the one on the left. ABC. ABC is congruent to triangle. Now for this next one, we got to be careful. When I look at this triangle congruence statement, the first 2 letters are AB. It would be EDF, yes. B is my right angle. So the right angle in the other triangle has to go in the center of the name. AB is marked with one congruence mark. That's my 30-inch side. ED is marked with one congruence mark. That's my 30-inch side. Remember, this has to match up the corresponding congruent pieces. So E, D, F, and then I'm going to say by side, angle, side. The two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. All right. Are there any things that I can mark as congruent between the two triangles on part B? What can I mark? Side GE down on the bottom. What is that congruent to? TR. Anything else it's congruent to? GO is congruent to TI. What else? Yes. I got one person in front of you, Elahashi. I can go ahead and send you now. Is there anything else that's congruent? Yeah. So one of the things I want you to notice here too, TR is 3 centimeters. IR is also 3 centimeters. So these two sides I can mark as congruent to each other, but then they're congruent to these two sides over here. So I'm going to use the same congruence marking for my 4 sides that are all congruent. What would this be? Which one of those 5 reasons could we use here? SSS, side, side, side. So are these two triangles congruent? Yes. So we're going to write our triangle congruent statement. Triangle, first triangle. Are you okay if we call the first triangle ITR? It does not matter how I name the first triangle. But then for the second triangle, I have to make sure to match up the corresponding congruent parts. IT is the first 2 letters here. That's my 5 centimeter side. So what would that correspond to over on the other one? OG. Yes. So this would have to be OG first and then E at the end. You're right. You did it in the right order. OGE. By side, side, side. All right. Let's look down at part C. Is there anything between the two triangles that I can mark as congruent? 40 degrees, 40 degrees. Anything else I can mark as congruent? What'd you say? Yes, ZX, this side right here, and NL, this side right here. 3 centimeters, 3 centimeters. Anything else that we can mark as congruent? ZY and NM. Perfect. All right, so let's walk around the triangle. Can I start with this piece here? No. Can I start with this piece here? Yes. Is this a side or an angle? Side. And then I'm going to walk this way. I have to skip Z because it doesn't have a marking on it. And I get here next. Is this a side or an angle? It's a side. And then I continue walking around the triangle and I get here and I have an angle. Same thing on the other triangle. I have a side here, another side here, and then an angle here. Can we use side, side, angle to show the two triangles are congruent? No. SSA does not prove congruence. Nicely Done. All right, to make D a little bit easier, I am going to shade my top triangle so I can talk about a pink triangle and a white triangle. And I'm going to pay attention only to the pink triangle at first. And I'm going to walk around this triangle. It's already marked with congruences. So I can start here. This would be a side. And then I walk to right here, and I see an angle. And then again, I'm just looking at the pink triangle, so the next thing I would walk to is this right here. That's another side. When I look at the white triangle, I could start here. I can't start here because it's not marked as congruent, and I can't start here because it's not marked as congruent. So I have a side, and then an angle, and then a side. Are these two triangles congruent? Yes. So then I would say triangle. Let's do the pink one first. Let's call the pink one DJO. DJO is congruent to triangle. Let's see, it goes DJ, that's like this, and J is marked with a congruence symbol, and that's in the middle. Well, what's the angle that's marked with a congruence symbol on the white triangle? Yes. So here's one congruence symbol. So would I do OP or PO? Does it matter? It does matter. It does matter. So this is either going to be OP or it's going to be PO. PO. We're doing that because O is marked with a congruence symbol right here. So they have to be in the same position. So it'd be POJ. Thank you. And we would say that these two triangles are congruent by what? What did we use here? SAS, side angle side. Very nicely done. All right, almost finished up. Let's look at E. Triangles are already marked for me, so I just need to walk around the triangle and see how it's marked. So here I have an angle, and then I walk up here and I have another angle. And I come around here, and here we have a side marked. The other triangle, this angle is congruent to this angle, so that's where I'm going to start. Then I walk here to another marked angle, and finally I walk here to my marked side. Are these two triangles congruent? Yes. First triangle, I'm going to call it ABC, is congruent to triangle. A is congruent to what on the other triangle? F. B is congruent to what on the other triangle? E. So this is going to be FE what? FED. And we would say that they are congruent by what? AAS. Or you could say SAA. Remember, the order of the letters does not matter as far as like you can turn it around backwards. All right, we're going to save part F for tomorrow. And we're going to keep practicing with marking triangles up. The new homework that you guys picked up on your way in the door is due on Friday of this week. New homework is due on Friday.